I think a lot of the immersive installations I've created in the past are kind of spaces of tenderness where people can be together on a heart level in a sort of there's a sort of innocence to them that is childlike and that maybe can help strip away all of our barriers, which can include identity. I mean, on the one hand, I identify as a queer and trans artist in my work. And on the other hand, like the ultimate purpose of creating these spaces is to go beyond identity and for us to all just to be able to connect on another level without erasing our differences, but just really being like, okay, there's something more to this and the ways we can connect that actually goes beyond who I am in the world. And so, that's really my ultimate goal with art making is just the community building and the joy and the creativity to sort of actually transcend all of our identities, and to find that heart space where we can all be open to each other, which is obviously much easier said than done. But art really does provide a powerful opportunity to do that.
Hi, friends. It's Donnabelle, your host of To Hum is Human, the podcast where we explore how tuning into our intuition helps us express our most passionate purpose. I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. In this episode, Imaginary Worlds, Real Change, the art of Sunny Allis, we explore how play, color, and storytelling could become tools for real transformation. I think you're going to love my next guest. Sunny Allis is a trans non-binary multimedia artist whose work centers around joyful freedom, community, and connection. Sunny is a true world builder, creating paintings, sculptures, puppetry, animations, and immersive environments that invite people to step into new realms of possibility. They studied directing and design at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and earned their MFA in integrated media at Cal Arts. Their award-winning animations have been featured internationally, and their public art installations have transformed spaces from Occidental College to the city of Santa Monica. Sunny is also a passionate arts educator, guiding students in storytelling, recycled art, puppetry, and world building for more than a decade. Their bilingual children's book, Hooray, What a Day, Biba Que Dia, celebrates queer joy and has been included in gender-inclusive classrooms recommended resources for educators. Their work is imaginative, intersectional, and deeply human, and today we get to explore the stories behind the worlds they create. Welcome, Sunny.
Thank you so much, Donnabelle. That was a wonderful introduction.
When you think back to your earliest memories of creativity, what's the first imaginary world you remember building?
I mean, in the two-dimensional realm, I definitely have a lot of memories of being in my bedroom, laying on my bed, coloring with markers. I'm an only child and spent a fair amount of time alone in my room, which I actually really enjoyed. So I spent a lot of time coloring. And I looked back at some of those sketches and it's an Easter factory and just there were already these worlds being built. I just kind of wanted to create these environments. And so I think even with just drawing and coloring, I remember as so many children do, world building in that way. My best friend lived next door from me and we were inseparable and we were always, again, as children do, creating worlds together. We constantly made blanket forts and would find little nooks in our houses to turn into clubhouses. I think we also had a clubhouse under her porch. We would crawl under the porch and make witchy potions under the porch together. I think it was called the Frankenstein Club. I mean, again, this is something the kids do, but yeah, lot of play and imaginative play with my best friend living next door, growing up and just turning every opportunity into an opportunity to create an imaginative world. Yeah.
You say as kids do. And of course, kids do have this sense of curiosity and awareness and aliveness and experimentation within them, but not everyone continues to keep doing that into their adult life. Was there a moment when you realized that imagination wasn't just play for you, when it was more of a calling?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I really focused a lot on theater. I really focused on playwriting and directing and design for theater. And that's when I started writing plays that I directed. That felt like something that I really was taking seriously and wanted to pursue further. I did actually end up applying mostly to film programs to go to college, which I see as an extension of world building and storytelling. Yeah, I was very much in the film and theater zone, I would say, in high school. And through those avenues, was really able to start to explore multimedia storytelling, which is
Mm,
what I'm doing today. But I think what's different now is when you create an immersive installation, it's an active experience for the viewer and the participant. And I love theater more than anything, but theater is also it's a passive experience. You're
mm,
sitting and you're not controlling the narrative or the experience. And
mm.
so I think it's been this interesting evolution of world building through theater and film, and then crossing a line where suddenly it's into this more open-ended space where people get to have more freedom in how they interact with and experience the imaginative world. But
Mm.
imaginative worlds are definitely still at the center for sure.
Well, I was just going to ask you, how did your time at NYU or and Cal Arts shape or disrupt the artist you are today?
They were both very transformative, powerful experiences that I have no regrets about. I mean, I think what's funny about both of those experiences, which maybe is the story of my life, is I went into the school thinking I was going to be doing one thing and left doing something completely different. My intention going into NYU was to study film, but my girlfriend at the time was an actress and she was in the experimental theater wing. And they were doing really, really cool, interesting, avant garde stuff. I mean, she had a class where they were literally being taught how to run up walls. Very physical theater, very
Wow.
physical theater. And I just felt so alive sitting in on her classes, and the sort of potential energy in those spaces really drew me in. And so I pivoted, and instead of studying film, I ended up studying directing and design for theater. Again, my interest was always mostly in creating spaces. And so I did choose plays to direct that were more experimental and avant-garde in nature. I directed a play by Gertrude Stein called Dr. Faustus Lights the Lights about the Faustian bargain with the devil. And it's a very open-ended text. And I think I was drawn to stuff like that because it gave me a lot of freedom to experiment with the world of the play. I also got really into puppetry during that time. And so I remember for that play in particular, making a bunch of puppets that were incorporated into the production. And I would also say that the combination of music and visuals is something that I think is a really big part of my practice, both today and back then. I think I was and still am really interested in nonverbal forms of storytelling,
Mm.
almost like visual poetry. And so I think my time at NYU really let me sink into exploring how do you create like a visual poem and how do you do visual storytelling, not necessarily with words, but with music. And I'm still yeah, that's very generative for me. And, I also, after NYU, directed some music videos, stop motion animation music videos. So I think, and even when I paint, I have to be listening to music. Music is so much the fuel, it's so much like the energy source for what comes out. I think a lot of other visual artists work that way, but I definitely work that way where the marriage of music and visuals really need to be there in order for me to lock into a space that really feels like I'm going to another world.
Sunny, you work across painting, sculpture, puppetry, animation, and immersive environments. When you begin building a new world, what's the first doorway you enter through? Is it color, character, sound, emotion?
In some ways, that's actually the hardest part. What's the focal point? What's the jumping off point? as someone who is very interdisciplinary and enjoys working in so many mediums, it's great to have so many tools in my toolbox. And also, it does make the beginning of any project slightly overwhelming because I'm just like, okay, I could literally work in so many different mediums. Where do I start? In some ways, that's the most challenging part. And I think it's the type of thing, and I'm sure you can relate to this, where without sounding too cliche, like a light bulb goes off and you're like, oh, that. I don't know why. I don't know what that's about, but I need to explore that. And
Mm.
it's intuitive. It's usually very intuitive. I remember last year, about a year ago, when I was thinking about creating a new installation, I was just like, I don't know, but there's something with a cord, like a plug and an outlet. And I don't know what's up with these tubes, but there's something with tubes. And it almost felt a little bit silly. The older I get, I think I really need to put even more care and energy into nurturing those intuitive ideas because they're not necessarily rational at all. And if you take a step back, you could easily question or doubt it or be like, is this silly? What is this? Is this for real? Yeah, I do think that's really how it starts. And then you have to follow that thread and see where it goes. And more often than not, it goes where you're supposed to go.
Well, and sometimes it's trusting it too.
Exactly. Learning to trust it. And then to some degree, committing to it, being like, I'm going to commit to really exploring this idea for the coming weeks or months or whatever it might be. Yesterday, I was actually at the gym working out. That's another situation where music is very useful as my fuel. This song came on that was all about queer people resisting being erased, fighting back against the erasure of trans identity. A big light bulb went off for me because I've spent so many years exploring queer joy, and I still will probably spend the rest of my life exploring queer joy. But I haven't in my work explored queer rage,
Mm,
which to
mm,
me feels like the shadow of queer joy. I don't know, a light bulb went off. What do we do with our rage in this moment, in this political moment in the world with my queer rage? And so I started thinking about could there be an installation, an immersive installation that's actually tapping into a way of being unapologetic about who we are, a
mm.
way of being like, no, we're not apologizing for who we are, and we're not going to make ourselves small, and we're not going to erase ourselves and disappear. So I started thinking about visuals and different elements that could happen with that. Now, obviously, it still needs to be explored much more. It's just a thread. But I feel like that was an example of something clicking where I was like, ooh,
Mm.
this feels like a fruitful thing to explore as an art project.
I feel like you've actually talked about joy as resistance to some
Yes.
degree. I know that in the face of all that's happening in the world, where we could be dwelling in these other parts of ourselves, even when we
Hmm.
question why things are happening the way they are and our place in it. Could you speak about joy as resistance too?
We need joy in order to survive as a species on a very basic level. We need beauty. We need laughter. We need to feel uplifted. We need to move our bodies in ways that feel good. These are all things that we really need to be nourished by on a basic level. I think if we don't center joy, I worry about our future.
Mm,
As we've discussed before, play, which is sort of the form of joy that I really enjoy working with in my practice, play is often primarily reserved for children. And I think that's part of what can be really challenging about becoming an adult. Feeling like you're calcifying or you're becoming stagnant or you're not continuing to expand. And it's like, okay, well, where's that spark? Where's that spark of joy? Where's that spark of play? Where are you finding it? So many of the spaces that we reserve for kids, including playgrounds, are totally essential for adults as well. There are certain aspects of my own childhood that I feel like I didn't get to totally experience. So, in some ways, it also feels like a gift to myself to sort of bring those to this part of my life and to continue to help keep my heart open in this moment.
I've experienced your art installations and especially the seesaw, which is simple and basic if we think about our childhood. Most playgrounds, although I have to say not many have them now, but most playgrounds had a seesaw. And when was the last time as an adult have you been able to sit on a seesaw and just experience that? And you give us permission by creating one for adults. I mean, they're also for children too, but mainly when you're going into a gallery space, you're encountering adults going to these. And so you've built these public art installations that invite people to step into these new but slash old realms. In your experience, what have you observed in people, either energetically or emotionally, when they cross that threshold?
I think what you said about people being given permission is at the core of it. People being given permission to play and to laugh and to bring a lightheartedness to their day and to let go and to take a minute to not have to be in their heads and to not have to worry. Yeah, again, I think the fact that these play structures are interactive and physical and involve climbing and swinging and moving through space in ways that we stop doing as we get older really just brings a sense of life and movement and play into our bodies in a way that can get clunky as we get older.
We do get clunky as we as
Yes.
we get older. We're a little stiffer going up that stairwell to the slide. But in your art installations, you invite this joyful freedom and intersectional storytelling. And I wondered, as a trans non-binary artist, how has your art helped you claim or expand your sense of self?
In every possible way, art provides me with a channel and an outlet that I think is a huge part of what connects me to my own authenticity. That authenticity includes my queerness and my transness, and yeah, it creates a space where I can push the limitations of identity, consciousness, the body, transformation, forms shifting. So much about art and form and color and shapes can be connected to the body and the body's transformation, which again feels related to queer and trans people. We've had to give ourselves permission to transform. Although that's a really hard and scary process, it ultimately ends up being totally liberating and frees you in many ways from a lot of the boxes and confines of society that if I hadn't been queer or trans might have been much, much harder to even see. It does feel like a really interesting dance and dialogue between my queerness and the fact that I'm an artist. It's opened up a lot for me. And it's not the easiest path being an
Mm.
artist, as you know. No one has charted it out for you. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer, and that can be really scary, but it can also be hugely liberating if you can be with it. And I would say a lot of that rings true for queer and trans identity. That feels like part of the connection.
Well, and also too, I feel like your environments that you create become a container, like a safe container
I was going to
too.
say a safe space. I really think they are. I think they often, in the past, whether it's a soft space, a play space like the one you went to recently, it is about creating these containers of play and joy and also safety and often tenderness. I think a lot of the immersive installations I've created in the past are spaces of tenderness where people can be together on a heart level. There's a sort of innocence to them
Mm.
that is childlike and
Hmm.
that maybe can help strip away all of our barriers, which can include identity. On the one hand, I identify as a queer and trans artist in my work. And on the other hand, like, the ultimate purpose of creating these spaces is to go beyond identity and for us to all just to be able to connect on another level without erasing our differences, but
Yeah.
just really being like, okay, there's something more to this and the ways we can connect that actually goes beyond who I am in the world. That's really my ultimate goal with art making is just the community building and the joy and the creativity to actually transcend all of our identities and to find that heart space where we can all be open to each other, which is obviously much easier said than done. But
Mm.
art really does provide a powerful opportunity to do that.
I agree. Now, you've spent more than a decade teaching sculptural storytelling, recycled art puppetry, and world building, especially with young people. What have young people taught you about creativity?
So many things. First of all, I think young people make the best art, my favorite art, my favorite stories, my favorite visual art. If only I could make art as cool as young people, my work would be done. If only I had the total freedom of a child's imagination.
Yeah.
It's funny, similar to coming out as trans, I think it's been a funny experience for me with working with kids where I make a lot of art without even trying to make it for children, but when I make it, people are like, "Oh, this is for kids." In the beginning, I was like, "Oh, that wasn't necessarily my intention," but I do
Mm,
think the spirit of so much of what I create connects with kids, and I think that's part of what led me in the direction of working with kids was, yeah, my own spirit of art making
mm,
which embraces accessibility, the idea that, hey, anyone can do this. Everyone is an artist. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has a voice worth sharing. And everyone should be making art with their friends in their communities with whatever is accessible, because this is how we connect and experience joy. And this is also how we create empathy and how we learn about each other and from each other. And this is how we build community. And so I think kids pick up on that in my work, especially work I've made with cardboard and recycled materials. They can really see, oh, I could make that. Kids can take a cardboard box and transform it into something incredible. So I think that's part of how we vibe. When I lived in Los Angeles, I worked at a really cool organization that taught young kids how to use a variety of tools, including power tools and woodworking tools, to build large scale immersive environments out of junk and trash and recycled materials. We had an entire warehouse of donated, repurposed materials. Fabrics and weird
mm,
stuff from factories and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So we would teach kids how to use the tools. And then sometimes we would have these week-long sessions of, okay, what environment are we building? And they would be like, we're doing an underwater scene or we're doing a theme park. They get to choose, and then we supported them in building the different structures, some of which were impressively large. Yeah, I learned so much from them just working at that place. I've also taught rock band class to kids for several
ooh,
years at a
nice.
school in LA and encouraging their songwriting. The main thing I'm able to contribute is presence and support and encouragement. And
Mm.
then I feel like if those ingredients are there, they're going to make something really awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in general, the freedom and the letting go and the non attachment and the non preciousness of how kids create is definitely a guiding light and a northern star that I try to channel when I'm making art, while at the same time also using my adult brain and thinking about, okay, what do I want this to be? So it is
Mm.
it is a bit of a balance at this point of spontaneity and not caring about the results and then actually trying to craft something that's intentional.
Well, and those are such valuable lessons for adults, right? Because we're almost addicted to outcome and
Yeah.
we want to have an eye on the prize when it's really, I believe the youth teach us about process.
Yes.
And it's really about being in the process of the making. And of course, they're in a world of wonder almost
Right.
all the time, and they don't have the restrictions that we have as adults. And so just being in that presence of that energy, I imagine would be so inspiring in itself. And then,
Very
yeah,
inspiring.
giving them the support they needed to help them create the thing they're thinking about is also really cool. There's something about you creating art with people rather than
Er,
for people. Could you speak about that a little bit?
I do feel like it's come in different waves. There are periods of time where I'm making art in a more solitary way, and that's a particular energy. And then there have been experiences which have been highly collaborative and are obviously completely different. As I've shared with you, I've been working on developing a gender inclusive multimedia kids TV show. Again, very inspired by children's shows of my youth, Sesame Street and Pee Wee's Playhouse and Mr. Rogers, the old school
Yes.
PBS vibes, even just the quality of the animation and the multimedia handmade, more tactile segments of Sesame Street in the 80s. I would love to bring more of that aesthetic back. Couple years ago here in Western Mass, I got a generous production grant to produce a pilot episode of the show. And that was a very highly collaborative process. I would say there were 40 or 50 people involved in just making that little 15-minute episode. There were voice actors, there was an animator, there was a whole production crew. There was a parade of my friends that paraded in wacky costumes through the set. There were puppeteers and puppet makers, there were prop builders, and I had a bit of a hand in all these different things because I enjoy all of those different forms. I mean, it goes without saying that the project became so much stronger than what I could have done by myself.
Mm.
And that's not to say I didn't need to nurture and protect the seed of the initial vision of the project. But I think once that vision was there and I was able to share it, I have the privilege of just having met so many awesome artists and awesome collaborators and awesome people that I was so lucky to just have an awesome crew of people. And we made something really magical on a shoestring budget in a relatively short amount of time. And I really hope to do more of that. On the one hand, I'm a very shy, private person who needs to work in a very solitary space. But on the other hand, it's like, get me out there with other people. Like, let's all do this together. I mean, the name of the
Mm.
kids' show is All Together Now.
I love it. I
It's like
love it.
all together
All
now.
now. And you also wrote a children's book.
Yes.
Hooray, what a day. I mean,
Yes.
platforms that you use are just amazing. I love that you try to find how to express what you want in whatever medium it takes. And so this book features a non binary protagonist moving through a joyful queer world. What inspired that story? I mean, I can imagine what inspired it, but what made you want to make a book about it?
Well, one thing that's interesting is the world of Hooray What a Day is actually the same world as the home base of the cartoon animated neighborhood in my kids' TV show. It's the same cast of characters, it's the same neighborhood. So, yeah, this neighborhood is so many things. On the one hand, it's this utopian vision of what the world could be that I want to live in. All right, I'll make it. And on the other hand, it's different elements of different places I've lived, life experiences I've had, where I grew up. I was fortunate to grow up in a really special community, a really special neighborhood with a lot of really special people and a lot of people who I'm still very close friends with to this day. I think I can't overestimate enough the power of community in how it can really change people's lives. There are things about my childhood that were challenging, and I have wonderful parents who I'm very close with. And there were things about my childhood that were hard. Thank God for that neighborhood. Thank God for all
Mm.
the other friends and adults who were there for me. And so, in a lot of ways, it's really tapping into that sense of care, that sense of community care and looking out for each other and being excited to create together. I used to be in a 40-piece radical marching band in New York
Yes.
City
I
called
was
the
going to
Rude
ask you
Mechanical
about that.
Orchestra. I played the drums in it, and that was like 40 of us. And we played at protests on the weekends in the streets, which often ended in giant dance parties amongst groups of strangers. So that's kind of woven into the neighborhood. The main character plays in the local neighborhood brass street band called Brass Revolution. Frankie's grandma has a hardware shop in town, which also has a drop in community building space in the back where people can come build projects with recycled materials. That very much comes from my time in LA working at a tinkering space. A lot of these just come from really generative, expansive experiences I've had in my own life that have shown me somewhat radical ways of being in the world that I think at the time I a little bit took for granted. Oh, yeah,
Mm.
I'm just in a radical marching band. Yeah, I'm just working at a place that takes junk and builds community celebrations. These things are actually so powerful. And so I think a lot of the book is really just an homage to all of those types of community building, creative projects and experiences that I've been lucky enough to be a part of.
What has been the most meaningful response you've received from a young reader or their parent or teacher?
It's been very heartwarming. It's been a combination of students or children feeling more confident to come out and be in their queerness. And again, students or kids feeling empowered to be art makers. I've definitely had a variety of experiences where the book has provided inspiration for either feeling seen and feeling accepted in their identity or feeling excited to express and create. My style is pretty rudimentary. I'm not an incredible illustrator as far as it comes to realism. Drawing these very cartoonish characters in a somewhat childlike style. And I'm using colored pencils and crayons and markers. And again, very tactile, accessible materials. And I think kids pick up on that and it creates like an opening or a connection for them.
If you imagine someone stepping into one of your worlds 10 years from now, what do you hope they feel in their body?
I hope they feel a sense of freedom that almost feels like flying, an openness where you're almost just in the air riding some waves that can carry you. I hope that they experience that sensation. I guess soaring. I guess another word for that is soaring. I hope
Mm.
they feel that sensation through either hands-on experience or whatever the experience is. Yeah.
I love that you also titled a show "We're Riding the Same Wave." I think there's so much within that title and that feeling. And a wave could be both very exciting and terrifying, right?
Yes.
There are crescendos and then there's descension, and the fact that we're all riding it together. I love that concept that you're not alone. We're
Yes.
here for each
Yes.
other, and we should be.
Yeah, we're all here together now riding these waves. There's highs
Mm,
and there's lows. There's soaring, there's
mm-hmm,
crashing. How
mm-hmm.
do we navigate this together? Also making space for play and joy. Not to mention, I'm definitely not a scientist, but when you start to read more about physics, oh, wait, isn't everything literally made of waves?
In actuality, it is. It's all frequency and vibration.
Yeah.
And I also read somewhere that an emotion lasts only 90 seconds. And if people understood that, if you could just ride that emotion and knowing that it will then eventually go down from the crest, that you
Wow.
can take a breath and just sort of know
Wow.
that you don't have to stay at the peak of that wave always.
I think you just made my day with that fact.
Just know it's gonna last for 90 seconds. It's
I
just a
can
cue
handle
for the
90
body.
seconds. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
90
handle that.
seconds. I think
Yeah.
people don't realize that, and they hover at the high
Yes.
peak of it
Or get stuck in the
or get stuck in
valley.
the valley, right? And
You
knowing
think it's
that
gonna go
eventually
forever.
no, 90 seconds.
We're riding the same 90-second wave.
That's the big takeaway from this podcast today. Well, Sunny, what's the next imaginary world you're dreaming into being?
Yeah, I do have one solo exhibition scheduled next year, possibly more, but so far there's one confirmed at Art for the Soul Gallery in Springfield, which I know you know. I mean, it's ironic we've been talking the entire time about joy, but I do want to circle back to the shadow for a second. This may or may not be my next show, but I do think there's a part of me, without getting too vulnerable, that's can perhaps conveniently ignored the shadow. And so I am interested in creating a show and a space where there's an outlet and a channel for releasing other types of emotions, right?
Hmm.
Because we're not
Mhm.
just, we can't just be joyful all the time. That's just not how it works, unfortunately. And what does it mean to actually hold space for those feelings that we don't really want to feel or have been told not to feel or have been conditioned through our genders in certain ways to repress? The flip side of the joy, the rage, and this moment. And yeah, what do we do with that? I'm interested in exploring that question. Does that mean I have to create a bunch of funky sculpture punching bags for people to punch? I don't know.
You know, those rage rooms were a thing where they give you axes and chainsaws and stuff.
Can we
There's
create
something
playful rage? I don't know. I wonder.
I feel like that is actually incredible fertile territory for you
I think
because
so.
there's just so much there that can be explored, and we're meant to experience all the feelings.
Yeah.
Not to tuck some away because when we tuck those things away, they just fester. And
So
when we
I've
can
been
give them,
told. So
yeah,
I've
we
been
can.
told, and so my road rage is pointing out. I was like, "You know what? I think I need to pay attention to this." So yeah, stay tuned for maybe some abstract punching bags. I'm also really interested in creating some paper mache human scale abstract sculptures of queer bodies and playing with the idea of gods and monsters through these sort of
Oh,
transforming. They're not grotesque, but maybe they also have an edge to them, but they're not asking for our permission. I don't know. I feel like
yeah.
there's something there for me to look at.
I'm actually so excited because I got a little glimpse into your mind, and it's just so rich. I love it, and I love that you just go with it, and just you've been trusting your gut this whole time, and that's what this whole podcast is about. It's like when
Yes.
you actually listen and then follow whatever that nudge is, it's
Mm.
gonna lead you somewhere where it could be a little scary, but at the other side, you come out with such a bigger, fuller perspective
Yes.
that I feel it where the reward really is.
It almost reminds me a little bit of like I've been doing this inner child thing with the play spaces and the tender spaces and the soft spaces. What about the inner teen?
Oh, that's a whole other environment right there.
The inner teen has some things to say.
The goth period.
Totally.
Gosh.
Totally. Like the
Well,
punk, the punk.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
what does
God,
the
we all
punk
went
have?
through it.
Yeah,
We totally went through it.
yeah. So stay
Sign me
tuned.
up if you need some volunteer.
Definitely. I'll be calling. "Hey, Donnabelle, can you test out this punching bag?"
Only if I can wear my neon pink and black.
Yes.
Anyway, Sunny Alice, thank you so much for
Oh.
sharing your imagination, your wisdom, and your joyful freedom with us today. Your work reminds us that the worlds we build, either in paper, in classrooms, or in public spaces, and most specifically in our own hearts, shape
Mm.
what we become and what becomes possible for all of us. So thank you
Well,
for being
thank
here
you,
today.
Donnabelle. It's an honor to be on your show, and I look also to you as a light and an inspiration for us all to look into the future and look beyond, yeah, just what's right in front of us in this material moment. So, thank you
Mm.
for all the incredible work you're doing.
Ugh, I'm so honored. Thanks for being here. I hope something from today's conversation stayed with you or gave you a new way to look at things. That awareness, that pause, that's where things start to shift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. You can learn more about my work and what's coming up at sonorous.light.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at @tohumIsHuman. Until next time, keep humming.